requires some additional thought, et cetera. The challenge, I think, sometimes is that a plan of conservation development gets adopted once every 10 years. So it's like if I said to you, you can only eat a meal once a week. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's not gonna work. And that's kind of what budgeting and planning is all about. So we're gonna take a plan and do a vision for 10 years. After 6 or 7 or 8 years, it's not as relevant as it used to be to the situation and circumstances we find ourselves in. So there's a little bit of creative tension, but hopefully also cooperation between the plan and municipal budgeting cycle, et cetera. And hopefully people advocate for things that are important to them that are in the plan, so that as part of the budget process, there's due consideration given to those as part of it. Yep.
Connie, can you just say one thing just quickly about that last column there? Because that appears throughout the whole
Thank you very
plan.
much. So, this last column, for every strategy or recommendation in the plan, in this column is identification of sort of the responsible parties. And I guess maybe responsible isn't quite the right phrase, but these are the parties that are expected to be the leaders or the partners in kind of making these things happen. So in this one, for example, it's about addressing zoning in the village center. The Planning and Zoning Commission is the gatekeeper of the zoning regulations, so they appear in every single one of those. If I go back, town, residents, property owners, inland wetlands, Conservation Commission, CMCO.
Hold on.
City
Sid, thank you,
manager.
there you go. Okay, I'll take, yes, Alex, I'll take acronyms for another. So, but the whole purpose here is that, in terms of making a plan a reality, under Connecticut law, almost every board and agency in town has independent statutory authority. So, trying to make a plan to tell other boards what to do is a little bit like herding cats, because you can't force them to do anything. But if the plan is well thought out, as inclusive as we tried to make it in terms of putting it together, to get input from people in consensus, and then we identify the entity that's responsible for it, the hope is that they'll work together to help make these things happen. And if other things happen, delays along the way or whatever, hopefully we'll get back to this. And a gentle reminder, the plan suggests that you might be working on this, is a way to kind of try to move that forward. And this again becomes partly the job of the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they are the cheerleaders for implementation of the plan. Some things are their responsibility, but here in terms of ecological networks, they don't appear here. Gateways, wayfinding, nothing here in terms of bicycle, pedestrian. So a lot of ways that other entities are involved. So this is meant to be kind of a cheerleader, encouragement, et cetera, moving forward, so that these things can happen. Thank you. Other thoughts or questions about the plan or about the town center?
I have a question about the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And so what percentage of that plan did we complete? Does it really matter? I mean, like, does it change as you roll year by year?
It does. 10 years ago, I was telling a story to Tom here before the meeting got started here tonight. So I've had occasion to be working in Norfolk now for about 12 years. I got a phone call many years ago from a resident. I think I know who it was, but I didn't really ask. And the question was, we have this thing going on in town called Yale Farm. We would like you to help us oppose Yale Farm. And my response was, well, thanks for calling, I appreciate it, but that's not what I do. What I do is help communities get together. So I'm not gonna do like one application or one situation, but when you guys decide that you wanna update your plan or work on your zoning regulations, please let me know. And a couple of years later, they called me and said, well, would you come and talk to us about what that involves? And I've had occasion to work with some other towns in Northwest Connecticut, and people in town had seen my work and chose to work with me. I was pretty excited about that. And so the plan that was from 20 years ago, that's what the green cover, Scott.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago, really didn't address some of the major issues that were going on in Norfolk in terms of the regulations and other stuff. So we kind of redirected the plan a little bit. Libby and Vint worked very closely in terms of crafting the plan language and chapters.
And Pete.
And Pete. But the number one thing that came out of that plan, in a sense, was our regulations are lagging behind for the issues that we care about now. So the number one recommendation came out of that plan was to update the zoning and the subdivision regulations, and those were done within the next couple of years. And then the town has called me over the years in terms of applications and asked me questions about them, et cetera, and I feel like, you know, I'm your foster parent in a way, that I'm always happy to respond to questions and stuff, because I think you guys are working in the right direction to do the right thing, and I wanna make sure you do it right, so I'm always sort of happy to help. So I think those are the main things that came out of that. This plan, I think the major focus on this one really sort of is, we recognize the importance of maintaining character. That's been in our plans for years, the natural resources and the other things. But the importance of the town center, I think, is something that we can't take for granted. We have to be vigilant in this situation going forward. So if I was to be standing here 10 years from now, I would like for us to be celebrating the improvements and accomplishments we made, that we became more of a campus. We incorporated these things, that there were more activities going on, and people were seeking Norfolk out, not necessarily to live here, but they're certainly welcome, but to come visit and spend time with us and enjoy what we have in our community, support our businesses, because if they spend money there, the business will be there for us. So we're being a little selfish, but to make this community continue to be strong, et cetera. Yeah.
To that point, I have a question. Does this document contain any assessment or examination of economics? And what I mean by that is that, you know, it's nice to say more, but certainly there are businesses that won't make it if only the people who are citizens in town use them. And so there are businesses, I mean, Infinity won't exist if only the people who live in Norfolk go there, because there's not enough population. So does this plan in any place take into account how many more, or in any way, shape, or form, talk about the economics of and survivability of any of these businesses or any of the things that we'd like to do?
Does not do a deep dive into that. It gives an overview of economic conditions in Norfolk and Northwest Connecticut. There was a study that was done by the COG in the last 5 or 6 years that had to do with strengthening our town centers, and they did a look at town centers all through Northwest Connecticut in terms of those types of situations. The pace of change for retail and other activities that's been going on is, so it's accelerating. I think it's clarified our focus. If people are shopping for food, right, they can use Peapod or you can go to Stop and Shop, okay? But people want to squeeze, feel, and touch.
No
No
Peapod here,
Peapod?
man.
So, we'll shop for.
That means a distribution center for Stop and Shop near here.
Oh,
That's
it's-
what that means.
Oh, it's interesting, because I live in Simsbury, over where we are, they run it out of the store. So, in any event, but people often like to shop in person because you want to squeeze them out and you want to, you know, and check everything out. So that's a situation that requires some place that's reasonably close. I mean, how far would you travel? Years ago, didn't this used to be, where was it? There was a grocery, was it here?
Infinity Mall.
But even before that, wasn't there, oh, this is the pharmacy.
There was a convenience.
So, okay, so but the issue is that people would do this because of what we had here. Nowadays, people tend to visit retail and other activities for the experience. So the concept that's growing is that if you just want to buy paper clips or widgets, Amazon or somebody else will deliver them within a day or two. You don't have to go out. But if you really want an experience, you can't get that anywhere else. So the thing that Norfolk has an opportunity to do is to share the environment that we have, which is engaging and enticing for people, and to have reasons to come here. And that could be the fundamental difference for us going forward. So I would suggest that it's an area we've got to remain vigilant and cognizant of, because I think the dynamics will change in the future again.
Is there a place, I don't think in the plan, but that you could go to see the structural chart of how individual towns relate to Hartford with a siting council and a local zoning and those relationships? Because that often comes up as you should be able to deal with this, but it's actually in Hartford where they're gonna make the decision. And is there a chart showing those relationships?
Not that I'm aware, that's a great question and comment, not that I'm aware of. I mean, even I've looked at DEP's chart, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, to try to figure out what department they're in. I can't figure it out. So it's pretty challenging, I think, and sometimes the idiosyncrasies in the law. We're even going through this situation right now that probably everybody in the room has a cell phone. And cell phones started out what they called 1G networks, with these huge mega towers that, transmitted for, now we're up to moving in towards 5G. It'll probably be sometime before 5G gets to Norfolk, but the question ends up being the technology has changed so much that it used to be regulated and managed by the siting council because towers were being built, but now the next generation of cell phones is going to be regulated by an entity in the state called PURA, because 5G is rolling out on telephone poles. The cells have gotten so small that it's no longer the huge tower. I mean, so there's the technology and the regulatory authority sometimes changes so fast, you just got to try to stay on top of it. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you that could be a lifetime project. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? There you go. Wow.
Good, excellent.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Again, as I said earlier in the previous.
There's a comment for you.
Well, his bark's worse than his bite. Again, I've had a chance to work with communities around the state, and I really do think that what happens here in Norfolk is so special that it makes you unique and different from other places. So whatever that is, bottle the water and sell it, or do something with it, but please try to keep it going. So thank you very much again.